So, welcome to this month's Lunch and Learn with Terry Bean and myself, where we are going to unpack some issues related to resilience and, a number of sort of surrounding issues with that. Because, as I had mentioned in one of my posts recently, this is a question I'm experiencing burnout. Oh, I'm really frustrated. I just don't know if I should keep going on this project. And I'm hearing that over and over again. And honestly, it seemed like there was a little bit of a lull in hearing that since COVID. And during COVID, it was everywhere. But I really think this concept of resilience is popping up more and more here and there. What are your thoughts on that, Terry?
I think it is. It's such a top of mind thing. And I think a big challenge that most of us have is we've convinced ourselves and others just how busy we are. We keep reaffirming that busyness factor. And the more you say something, the more it becomes real. And the more it becomes real, the more your body starts to react to it. So I tell people that no, I'm not busy at all. I'm productive, right? But I don't ever let myself feel overwhelmed. And it's a mindset. It's a choice that we have to make. And so I hope that we do a good job of clarifying how to get into that space where we're not the ones putting that much pressure on ourselves because so much of it is self-induced.
I'm actually going to give you big props on this. That was one of my typical answers when somebody would ask, "Hey, how's it going?" "Oh, busy, but good." I usually follow it up with something but good. And when you brought that to my attention and brought that to my awareness, I have stopped saying busy. I now either say I'm really productive, I'm really enjoying the work that I'm doing right now. Because busy
Really
is just
blessed.
so easy, right? It's so easy and we do that. But what are we actually doing to ourselves? Now, I will say this, when I did make that shift, because of my behavioral science background, I'm like, all right, I'm going to start noticing how's the reaction? What's my personal internal reaction? What's other people's reaction? And I've noticed that people react in a much more positive way when you say busy, because you say, "Oh, I'm busy," when you don't say busy. When I say busy, people are like, "Yeah, you're running around, you're doing all these things," and so on and so forth. But if I'm like, "I'm really productive right now, I'm feeling great and really elevating some of the different things that are really important to me," they're like, "Oh my gosh, that's cool." Like that response, what I never expected. So I get a more positive response back from other people, but I'm also realizing that the response from myself feels a little bit more authentic, or it literally kind of like motivates me. So I'm going to say thank you to you for surfacing that awareness for me, but I think that's really important. I
I
think, yeah,
appreciate
go
that.
ahead. Yeah, yeah.
It's to me, it's just an important piece, right? I think about it. I work with a lot of solopreneurs, right? And I'm a solopreneur. Am I busy? Yeah, like way too many things going in, way too many directions, way too much time all the time. But do my clients want to hear that I'm busy? Are they going to be like, oh, well, you're super busy. I guess you'll have a lot of time for me then? That's not how it works, right?
Yeah.
So we have to think about it not only from our own internal perspective. And I love the fact that you said you want to look at the shift in how you feel versus how is the response coming at you. And I think just that one just that shift is so important because I'll be honest with you, a lot of us are busy doing bullshit, right? I don't, that's a technical term. So, you can apply it to whatever your life is, but there are people that are genuinely busy, right? And there are times when we are all genuinely busy, but a lot of us are caught up doing things that aren't moving the needle.
And I think that's such a good way to kind of think about that, right? Like one of the reasons that we might say that we're busy is because, well, we don't want to burden somebody else with our other challenges or problems. Oh, really busy, or we're making an excuse. Hey, I haven't reached out because I've been super busy or anything else. But I think if we're a little bit more authentic in that answer, it does actually have an impact both on ourselves and the other person. So we're here to talk about resilience, and before we get into this topic and get deep, I want to kind of explore what does resilience mean to you, Terry? Because I have my own thought process, and I feel like in the different things that I have experienced over my life, I feel like I've got good resilience. I feel like I test my resilience. But um, I definitely want to jump in and kind of get an idea. How do you define resilience? What does that mean to you? Because I think it might mean different things to different people.
When I think of that phrase, the first thing that comes to my mind is the old Chinese adage, knock down seven times, get up eight,
Mm.
right? The ability to persevere, the ability to keep going despite whatever's going on, right? There's an old statement that a buffalo is the only animal that in a storm walks deeper into the storm. Every other
Mm.
animal turns and runs, and they stay in the storm longer because they're not going through, they're staying in. The buffalo walks the opposite direction and gets out the end of it. And there's a resilience there too. So that's how I think about it. How do you think about it?
I actually really like that, and I didn't know that about the buffalo, so I learned something here today on today's Lunch and Learn. For me, resilience is one of those aspects of sort of, we've heard it called a number of different things. I've heard it called grit, or I've heard it called determination, or anything else. And I kind of feel like you hit the nail on the head with a little bit of your answer there of is not just being able to overcome the knockdowns or not just being able to weather the storm, but feeling like we're equipped with the tools or resources to navigate the seemingly endless number of challenges that we face on a daily basis. And I think that, challenges can come in a wide variety. And what's a challenge for you might be very different than a challenge for me. How I react to this situation, that is really where I kind of see like the structure, the foundation of resilience. And it's one of those where I think that it's so easy. It is so easy for us to look around the world and see all the different things that are challenged, like, oh my gosh, the economy, or oh my gosh, my job, or oh my gosh, my family, my friends, my situations, and whatever they are. And those situations are very, very real. But when we get into those situations, so often, I think, at least I can tell you this from my personal experience, one of the natural things in our brain is to start thinking, I can't believe this is happening to me. And the second part of the brain is we stop thinking that how many other people are probably undergoing those same things. And we feel very alone. We feel very isolated. We feel like there's no way out of this storm. It's just like this storm is literally just sitting around me, and I am the person in the center of it. So when I think of resilience, I really do think kind of the first step, at least for me understanding resilience, is acknowledging whatever the situation is, other people have probably been through it, probably solved it. And realistically, I'm a human being. I have the capacity to solve it too. And that's where resilience starts for me, is the ability to see that. That's actually so one of the books that I'm listening to right now, and I'll share this and I'll share it in a link, is called Neurodharma, and it's by Dr. Rick Hansen. He is a practicing PhD in neuroscience and also we'll call it a Zen, practicing Zen. I don't know if I would call him a monk, but he is definitely 25 years in on a journey towards Zen, enlightenment.
Enlightenment.
And he wrote,
Uh-huh.
yeah, and he wrote the book Neurodharma, and it's all this blend of like the actual neuroscientific impact of practicing like the seven pillars of happiness within the concepts of enlightenment. And one of the things that he says is, I thought this was brilliant and spitball this with me. I love adrenaline inducing events. And one of the things that he says is he went rock climbing. Now, if we looked at our brain and how our brain is structured, the drive to defend, right? Like our limbic system, our earth element that says, don't do that. We need to be safe. We need to be predictable. We need to be certain. Would tell us never go rock climbing. Only bad can happen, right? Like
I,
that's what it would
for
tell us. Or never
sure.
jump out of a perfectly good airplane. That's not going to, whether you're parachuting or, anything else like that. But he said one of the reasons that we're able to do that and overcome that barrier is because when we're rock climbing, we feel, and whether we do or not, that we have the skill and the resources to overcome that risk or that challenge. When we're jumping out of the airplane, we feel like our practice, our preparation, our packing of the parachute has prepared us to overcome that challenge. So we're able to make that leap even though we know that it's something that could be, quote, dangerous. Resilience, I think, is recognizing that internally we have the capacity, the tools, the parachutes, the tribe, and all of those other resources that we can use to overcome some of those challenges. What do you think about that?
Well, let's start with the fact that we have history on our side. Every single challenge that has been thrown into your lane you've overcome. Otherwise, you wouldn't be sitting here right now. It's a physical impossibility that you didn't make it through those. So that's one thing. I want to jump back to the Earth comment about the wiring and the safety piece. And those who have attended before know that my Earth is zero, non-existent. I'm earthly-less. And so it's part of the reason that I'm pretty sure one of my mantras is safety third, right? And the ability to jump out of an airplane with a chute that somebody else packed and never even question it because I was like, well, this guy's a pro. He knows what he's doing. It's better
Yeah.
him packing it than me. So let's go. But I think there's such an element to that resourcefulness, and I want to look at those 7 pillars of happy, because I think that's really important. I made a post the other day and it's I float in the lake a lot, and it's I'm getting to the end of float season, and that's where I completely align spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally, financially sometimes if I'm thinking about solving work issues. But that's the time for alignment for me. And one of the things I posted with a photo of me floating was be easily amused. You'll
Mm.
live a happier life. And these are choices that we get to make in every single day, in every single interaction. We can choose whether we're going to find amusement or stress in a situation. The situation is, right? Always. How we respond to it is the only thing that really matters.
And I think that that's, we're going to get into some tactics of how can we manage our responses, and especially in thinking about some of our elements and how those might show up for us. But I do want to remind audience, if you have questions on resilience, burnout, strategies for management, or even comments, and I see Francesca's comment in there. What a great topic today. Thank you for that, Francesca. Francesca is actually a resilience coach, works with people on building up their resilience. And that's where I think I want to start is what are some of the things that maybe you do to build up resilience? I'll share a couple of mine. Thinking about resilience, what is resilience really other than that reaction that you're talking about? So a difficulty presents itself, whatever that difficulty, whatever that challenge might be. And do we feel like that we have the resources, the tools, or anything else to be able to do that? One of the things that I like to do is I like to test myself. And to your point where we were talking, we were just spitballing before anybody had gotten on. One of the things that I really, really love do is challenging myself, getting myself out of my comfort zone. One of the ways that I do that, a lot of you, some of you might actually know this. I just did a 5 day hike into the woods, no food, no water, only living off the land. Ate a lot of wild carrot soup, which, by the way, tastes like tree root. And, to see, am I able to do this? Can I be uncomfortable? First 2 days, no food other than this wild carrot soup, which, by the way, less than 100 calories worth of soup on 2 days and still trying to survive, build for shelter, etc., inside of the woods. That is one of the ways that I like to test my resilience is because if I can survive that, you know what? Whatever's thrown at me. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't have enough money for a double latte this weekend or something like that. It kind of puts things in perspectives. I'm just teasing on that question, but it really does help align my perspective. another thing that I really like to do, and these are what's called micro resiliences. That one maybe is a little bit more than a micro, but micro resiliences are doing things that are just a little bit harder. We live in a world of convenience, and when things are not convenient, we get really frustrated with them. Think about driving around the parking lot trying to get that front spot, or like, oh my gosh, I have to park in the very back of the parking lot. I actually will park farther away, not even to protect my car or anything else like that, but to take the extra length of a walk. I hit myself with a blast of 20 seconds to a minute's worth of ice cold water at the end of my shower. And I sit there and I breathe and I just tell myself, you're safe, you're okay. This is temporary. This pain sucks, yes, but you're going to get through it. And it's just something that I'm conditioning my brain that when I'm feeling discomfort, that's okay. It's okay to feel some discomfort. I have the resources to turn around, shut the water off. I have the resources to be able to walk into the space. I have the resources to be able to overcome or manage that pain, that challenge, and recognize that I'm safe and it's only temporary. So that's something that I like to do to kind of supercharge some of my different aspects of resilience. Are there anything that you do? Like, what do you do to challenge yourself, Terry? What's sort of the top? And thank you, Kathy. I appreciate that. We did survive. We ended up getting fish day 3, which was really, really nice. We smoked some fillets and had a little fish head soup. But yeah, it was touch and go there for the first two.
Very welcome, I would imagine. That was like the best
Yes,
fish anyone's ever caught in the history of fishing.
I've never had a better tasting fish, and I've never been more grateful to Mother Earth. Let me tell you.
So to answer your question, I go back and forth. I'm old and lame. So let's start with old and lame. And then let's move into it's got to do with cold. So when you talk about that cold shower blast, I resonate with that and appreciate that. I paddleboard frequently, and unless something goes terribly wrong, I will be on that board every month this year. And I live in Michigan, people. So that means I paddleboarded in January and paddleboarded in February. And by the grace of anything, the lake was open enough to those things to happen in January and February this year. And that's unusual. I was in the lake about 3 weeks after it thawed. So that water is probably 55 degrees, maybe if it's lucky. So I'll spend some time and I'll be in that lake up until November again. And so those things, and if it's 10 below zero, you're going to find me walking on the lake out there because I love the cold. Um, the rest of it is just putting myself in situations that aren't as comfortable. This discussion we had when we started, going to talk politics. I'm only talking politics with my friends. So imagine showing up on a newscast and having a conversation where I know I'm out of my depth intellectually, right? I know that I'm not able to bring the heat that I am accustomed to bringing when someone hands me a mic. So, but it was cool and it was a great experience. And I'll do it again. And my friends are like showing me the logo, the little stamp that says Terry Bean voter. It's like the only credential I had was that I know
Love
how
it.
to vote. So
But
but it was cool.
But you said yes, and even though it was uncomfortable, even though it was something that maybe was a little bit, outside of what and I think we all suffer this, right? Like in some cases, we start getting that imposter syndrome, and I think that that can pull away from our resilience. We start, what am I doing here? Why am I even, why would they want to talk to me? But the reality is you are armed with the tools to be successful in conversation or in connection, and while you may not be a guru or a political pundit or a hack, you're great at making connection and talking to people and speaking on stage or even coaching or asking the right questions. So you're armed with this set of capabilities that even if you're put into that kind of unique situation, you can draw on that experience, that knowledge to be able to navigate your way through it and ultimately find success and say, hey, that wasn't so bad. Let's do it again. Because I do see Kathleen comment in the chat in the Q&A. Now I just feel bad about my level of resilience. I couldn't make it 24 hours. I promise you, actually, Kathleen, You can. And here's one of the things, and this is part of the reason why 5 days was for this trip. It was because I know within the bottom of my heart that you cannot die of starvation in 5 days. You're not going to do it. So then what do I have to worry about? Injuries. I have to worry about hydration, and I have to worry about, potentially any other risks that could occur. But really, injuries and hydration. I can last the 5 days. Humans can last nearly 21 days without food, believe it or not. It's incredible, but our bodies are much more resilient than what our brain thinks. So you could, I guarantee, do 24 hours. It may not be comfortable, but you could do it. And I see a couple of other comments here. Um, when you're thinking about some of these challenges, a big part of what it really comes down to is, I think what you said earlier, Terry, is sort of that mindset of, I can do this. No matter what happens, I can get out there. I could sit for 24 hours. I could sit for 48 hours, not expend a lot of energy, not do this, not do this, not go swimming in the river, not go X, Y, and Z. How can I take what I have and really make success with it? And I think that one of the strategies, and this is a strategy that I want to share, when I start looking at something like that challenge that maybe is testing my resilience or my capacity for resilience, one of the things that I really like to do is, the first thing is take a step back and say, what is the absolute worst that can happen? And then I start going through that, because now in many cases there's bad things that could happen. I could lose my job. I could do this. I could do this. I could do this. Okay. Well, is there another job that I could get? Sure. Is there another way that I'd be able to, I could lose my house. Okay. Do I have friends that would put me up for a night or two? Yeah, sure. I could lose my X, Y, or Z. Okay. Well, is there another pathway that I could achieve that gratification or whatever it is? And I really start talking myself through, what is the worst thing that can happen here? So often that's enough of the perspective shift that I need to say, I'm adequately armed to be able to do this. I have some safeties, I have some fallback plans. And this is where neurodharma is actually really a powerful. I put the resource into the chat, by the way. I put the title of the book and the author, neurodharma. One of the things that, in one of his meditations is telling yourself, I am safe, I am capable, and I have the opportunity to thrive beyond whatever's in front of me. And it's just like, huh, okay, I like that. Let's go with that. So just telling our brain that, taking that step back and saying, what's the worst? I'm capable, I'm safe, and I have the ability to overcome that, just like I have in the past. See some great comments going on in the chat, Terry. What is one of the things that you do when you're facing sort of that challenge, that issue? What is one of the things that you try to take on, or what's your approach?
So the big one for me, and I love what you say about what's the worst thing that can happen, right? I use that all the time. And the answer is always the same, man. The answer is always death, right? So great. Let's build a plan B for the next worst thing that might happen. And if we can build a contingency plan, and it doesn't have to be fully blown out, drawn out, or anything executable, but have an idea of what you might do if shit goes sideways, and then just go for it. And the worst thing that can happen for me most of the time is someone might find out something I didn't want them to find out. This thing last night, I might have said a thing that's going to turn some people off. Well, if you hang out with me long enough, I was probably going to say something that was going to turn you off anyway, right? I'm just cutting to the chase here. And so I like that idea of having that plan B if things go sideways, but knowing that you're not gonna die. Maybe not in a 5-day wilderness survival situation. You actually literally could. But you're right. You're not gonna die from starvation, and you were by a river, so you would have been fine. Um, and just do it. And then it's like, I was never a runner, right? Like I would run occasionally, but I never liked it. And it was always that, You got 1 more minute in you, dude. You got a half a mile more in you, dude. You've got X amount of whatever that unit of measurement is in you. Tap into it and keep going. Right. And we talked about the idea of, fires like things gamified. So, hey, I made a 7.5 minute mile. Again, I wasn't much of a runner. Let's see if I can keep that pace or even break that pace this next mile.
You're a
So
better
I
runner.
was
You're a better runner than I am, just FYI. Like even in my prime of playing hockey, like every step was an angry step. I never experienced a runner's high. I don't believe in it. I don't think it exists. So for anybody that tells me otherwise, I've not experienced. Science doesn't prove it for me. Uh,
I love
every
that.
step was just,
So
I did
brutal.
it. I did it, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Is it? What are you doing? Why? You're not going anywhere, right? Stop. I just listened to Shoe Dog, which is the Phil Knight book that the movie Air was based on. So Phil
Mhm.
Knight, the guy who created Nike,
Yep.
absolutely brilliant, fantastic storytelling, great business lessons. Highly recommend Shoe Dog. Um, but he talked about being a runner, and when he was a runner in the early 60s, it wasn't really a popular thing. It was like, you're crazy. Where are you going and why? No one's chasing you. Settle down. And so it's kind of an interesting look at life. So yeah,
Yeah,
running, I don't know. I should have done weightlifting. That one I've spent a lot more time doing, right? So one
that's
more
right.
set, man, two more
One
reps,
more. One
10
more.
more pounds, whatever the
Yeah,
case may be.
when I played hockey, that was my trainer's favorite thing. Just one more. Just one more. I was like, you just one more'd me about 15 more times. So I want to comment on a few of the things in the chat. Sarah says, remember, no matter how much of an imposter you feel you are, chances are someone else looks to you as knowledgeable. And I think that that goes back to kind of like acknowledging I have the resources, I am capable, I do belong here. The very first TEDx talk that I did, I don't generally get imposter syndrome when I go and speak, but that very first one that I did in 2018, I was coaching all of the other speakers. Like beforehand, I'm like, you got this, you're the expert, you know your stuff. And then they called my name and said, 3 minute warning, Jay. And I was just like all of a sudden it was like everybody else's emotions just came into me at that moment. I was like, okay, stop, take a deep breath. You're safe. You know your content. Focus on the delivery. Same thing I just told everybody else. But I want to get into that because I think that this is an interesting space for a conversation about burnout, right? Like when we think about resilience and burnout is one of those things that can have a huge impact on an organization, on our performance, and so on and so forth. And what we do know, at least from the research that we've done, is our water elements, our drive to bond, tends to show higher levels of burnout than some of the other elements. And, in discussion and thinking about that, a lot of times it's because they're carrying around the emotions of other people or their influence. It hits them like right in the heart. I've had it explained to me of like, when I see, somebody who is suffering, literally like an inside of me, a part of me actually hurts. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot of emotion to carry. That's not even the emotion that's being generated inside of your own brain. So that's really, I mean, all emotions generated inside of our own brain, but not from our own experience. That act of empathy can bring in energies that are around us. And I call it energies, but let's say it just, from the science side of things, emotions that are around us. So when we think about resilience, waters can simultaneously be the highest levels of resilience because they're capable of carrying a lot more than just their own burdens. But that also kind of comes to a conclusion at some point in time. We start to go, enough's enough. I can't do this anymore. And we shut down or we tune out or we, disengage or we quietly quit or any of those other things that are sort of those defensive protection gestures of when our resilience taps out. Have you coached anybody in that space, Terry, or have you supported anybody? What are some of your things? How do you manage or help other people maybe get through something like when they finally feel like their tank is just tapped, they've got nothing left to give? How do you keep them going?
So I wrote a book on this whole piece about a year and a half ago, and it was like a love letter to my daughter to help her bully up her mindset. Because to me, this is the thing that we have that is going to keep us moving forward. And ultimately, that's all we can ever do is keep moving forward. Yeah, there are times when you're going to have to sit down, lay down, or just tap out, but you always got to get back up and get back in the game, right? You just have to. And so for me, the mindset piece is really this exercise in getting hyper clear and hyper focused on the things that matter most to us. And what I have found in coaching hundreds of people and interacting with thousands of people is the majority of us really wouldn't know what we wanted if it bit us in the ass, right? I mean, we've got some high level ideas, right? Some talking points. I want to travel. I want to make a lot of money. I want to provide for my family. I want to have love and I want to feel loved. But there's no specificity. And until you get hyper clear on what does that love look like, where does that travel lead you, what is that large amount of money, until you get specific and focused on what those things really are, you don't have the ability to say no to things that aren't for you. And the biggest secret I share with people is that, dude, no needs to become your second favorite word. And it becomes your second favorite word once you know what hell yeses are. Because
Mm.
if it's not a hell yes, it probably should be a no. And it's okay. Someone commented in here about when they ran for mayor, the idea of losing was worse than the loss itself, right? And so that whole FOMO, fear of missing out piece that we're all running around worried about is the same thing. You're not actually missing out on anything if the thing you're not doing this for is because this thing's a hell yeah for you. There's no missing out. You're living your best life over here. So I it starts with clarity, man. That was a really long answer.
No, it's a great answer though, and I think you nailed a couple of things, is being able to identify what really matters or what my focal points are, and being able to draw boundaries. And sometimes being able to draw boundaries on people, on projects, on opportunities. Because everything that we say yes to ultimately means that we're saying no to something else.
That's
And
right.
when we start framing it that way, it really kind of makes sense of what is my priority and how specific is my priority, because it's easy to get distracted. And, having the focal point can really kind of keep that North Star mentality of one more step and I'm going to reach my goal. One more action, one more this, one more that. And it can kind of keep that resilience inside of our brain because there's an endpoint that we know that we're trying to get to. But if it's just this big nebulous, we need to get to space. Okay, well, I can jump. Is that space? Like, what is that? What does that even mean? Like, how do I keep pushing or pushing or pushing? So yeah, and Kathleen had mentioned the mayoral race. I lost a race for state representative in 2014, and I know exactly what she's talking about. The very idea of losing the race or having to give an acceptance speech or letting down the people that were working on the campaign or that contributed, all of those things were a number of different fears. For me, and this is maybe one of the things that I try to do and helps me out a little bit, is again, I take that step back and I ask, what's the worst that's going to happen? Honestly, I am glad I lost that race because that actually helped me to better understand I'm really not interested in pursuing a life of politics and focus on the behaviors and the things that I really want to focus on. So that helped me get clear on what my actual goals were. And looking back, it's much easier to make that statement than it was the night that I did have to give an acceptance speech and I did have to thank all of my supporters. So that was still tough. But, when I think about one of the things when I'm starting to feel burned out is reaching out and connecting. There's a really incredible resource. So, audience, if you've not heard of this, actually, Francesca, thank you for this. She brought me into this book. It is called The Resilience Project, and it is a bloke out of Australia who It talks about the beginning of the project. Literally, he talks about some of the challenges him and his family had faced as young people and how he reacted and how he responded to those challenges. His sister had anorexia, and he didn't exactly respond in a way that was sort of kind, connected, calming, and he learned a lot. He learns a lot along the way. So he goes into education. He starts saying, hey, the biggest challenge that we're seeing in education is that people are not able to essentially have confidence, self-worth, value, and that's stopping them from learning. So he starts looking, and he ends up in this he ends up in this small town through a series of events. He ends up in a small town in I want to say it was in Tibet. It was a very rural town, didn't have much money. Like the schools were packed, but the kids were so happy and they were so thankful and they were so grateful that they were going to get to go to school. And their playground equipment, they rushed them out and showed them the playground equipment. It's this rusted metal bar. And like the schools that he had taught at in Australia had these beautiful multi-million dollar facilities and all of this nice stuff. But the kids that were in this small rural community were happier, and he was like, there's got to be something there. And he links it to what he calls GEM, GEM, gratitude, empathy, and mindfulness. And the gratitude part is being thankful for what we have, because our brain is so much like, I'm going to get this next thing and then I'm going to be happy. I'm going to get this next thing and then I'm going to be happy. And it's this perpetual cycle. So it's actually taking a moment to step back and being thankful, empathizing with other people, thinking about them and connecting with them, and being mindful and staying present in the existing moment. When I'm experiencing burnout, this is the one thing that I try to do is I reach out to somebody that I haven't talked to in a long time. It refocuses. So like, when I share this, I've actually had nurses do this, nurses that were experiencing a lot of burnout. I said, here's what I want you to do this week. I want you to reach out to somebody on your list, an old friend, somebody from high school, somebody that you've lost touch with. I just want you to reach out. This is your only thing. Reach out, say hello, and ask how they're doing and see where the conversation goes. It's that simple. Every single one of them, 100% of them came back. And there was probably about 60 or 70 nurses that did this. 100% of them came back and said, I can't even tell you how quickly that shifted my mindset. I learned about their challenges. I was able to talk about some of mine, but it was just so nice to feel connected again. And that part of the brain is so important, that oxytocin, that drive to bond. It's really interesting to think that bond can make us feel burned out, but it can also help bring us out of burnout. And I think that that's a really important thing to take.
I think about the old story about if we were sitting around a campfire and we were all asked to put our problems in the center of the circle and talk about each one of them individually, how quickly we'd all just grab our own problems right back. Right. And I appreciated the point that you said early on in this conversation that we lose sight of the idea that other people are going through crap too, right? We get, it's real easy when someone's telling you about their rough day, their rough patch, whatever, to get super empathetic and be very spiritual and zen about how they can solve their issues. But when we have our own, we're like, no, you would never understand, even though you're talking to someone who just went through something 10 times worse yesterday. But you'd never get it. So it's kind of fun. And I'm a big fan of don't take yourself too seriously. My air is very, very high, so I come off as aloof occasionally. But it's because not that I'm aloof, it's that and I've said this probably on the show before, if what we're talking about isn't as interesting as what I was thinking about before we started talking,
You're
I'm
on to the
probably
next.
tapped out, right? You,
Yep.
you, you had a shot. I gave you the opportunity, right? My water's high enough to let you ramble, but at some point, I'm back over here, man.
Yeah.
And I think there's a piece to that about um just trying to be more calm, and it's a choice, and that's the thing that I think bugs me the most about people is we act like we have no say in it. And so I'm confused a little bit based on whether I'm just wired so specially that I believe it's a choice and choose differently than others, or if people don't know it's a choice, it's never been explained that way, that they get to choose what happiness looks like, choose what joy looks like, choose what stress looks like. Or if, they just don't care. And I'm confused by that.
It's interesting because there is some research. Andrew Huberman on his podcast, the Huberman Lab, had Jocko Willink on the show, and recently spent 4 hours in a car. Got to listen to all 4 hours of the episode in a row. But
Wow.
one of the things that they talk about is some people are wired as generators and some people are wired as projectors. Now, the science on this isn't necessarily deep enough to say this is true, but one of the things is that generators tend to see themselves in the driver's seat of life, and they tend to see themselves. Now we can transition, we can shift our perspective, but projectors tend to see themselves in the passenger seat. Life is happening to them. They're not necessarily in control of the situation. And when we kind of take that ownership perspective and say, "Hey, I'm going to step into this ownership and say, how did I contribute to this situation either by doing something or not doing something?" How what am I, and I really loved Francesca's comment. I wanted to comment on it earlier, but I'm bringing it in now. What is this here to teach me? What am I able to learn from this opportunity? Because it's not just about like beating ourselves up that we're in a situation, but sometimes it is. What is this here to teach me? What is this testing in me? Is this testing my resolve? Is this testing my patience? Is this testing my empathy, my compassion, my love? Is this testing my relationships? What is this here to teach me? And what is it here to test me? So when we think about some of those different aspects of, are we wired differently? The brain has neuroplasticity. So wherever we're at today, we can be better tomorrow and even better
Thanks.
the next day and even better the next day. And I think that that really leans back into resilience, is saying, I want to choose to be better tomorrow. And I might have to face some adversity, right? There's every movie that we ever watch. Can you imagine if Star Wars was just like, all of a sudden, Luke Skywalker starts his whole process and the Empire's just like, no, you're probably right. Let's just cut it, and there's no challenge, nobody's going to watch that movie, right? Our life is the movie. We're going to face adversity. We're going to face challenges. And it's part of that sort of process that we go through that really turns us into that next stage of our life, or the next stage of our development, or the next stage of our spiritual, emotional, or whatever awakening. And I think that without the adversity that we face, yeah, I guess we wouldn't need resilience, but that'd be a pretty boring world where everything just stays the same. So
You
thinking
know,
about it like that can help, I think.
you think back on Oprah Winfrey getting told she wouldn't be good for TV, Michael Jordan getting cut from his freshman basketball team, right? Like the people that have gone on to the highest level of the thing they did, getting kicked in the teeth on the way to do it, man. And there's something really, really strong about that because I think a key element that we haven't talked about is there's a piece of resilience that when channeled properly becomes the motivator. It becomes the
Mhm.
driver of that whatever the behavior or the thing we're trying to accomplish. And I talk about the idea that stress can live under our thumb and or live on our chest and weigh us down and make us feel like we can't even move, or stress can feel like fire on our backside and be fuel to propel us. And again, we choose how we look at it, right? If I have a tight deadline, I can either procrastinate even more and put something off because it makes me panic stricken, or I can say, "Whoop, time to shift into gear and get this thing moving." And I think it's so important that um, we understand that although we often talk about the world as black and white or black or white, it's really 54 shades of gray, right? We have all this things that aren't just these binary yes, no, on, off, up, down, light, dark conversations, right? It could be no, it could be not now, it could be not with you, it could be not that way, right? There's 16 different ways to look at something, and when we start examining them from 360 degrees around, we'll come up with much better conclusions, much better opportunities, and much better ways to go about things.
Love that. And I think that's really insightful. So, audience, I do want to give you the opportunity. Do you have questions? Are there things that we can answer for you or areas that we can lean into? But I do want to talk a little bit about the elements. One of the questions that I'm often asked is, okay, uh, does fire have more resilience than water? And actually, it's so interesting to me, and this is part of the reason why I like this as opposed to maybe some of the other assessments out there. It's not a question that one element has more resilience than another. Actually, all elements have some level of resilience and some level of, kind of no resilience. Let me give you the example of this. Fire elements, in many cases, yeah, they've got some of that determination, that passion, that goal, that focus, and they drive forward and they will push and they will push and they will push. That has been the case for me in a number of different spaces. I'm very, very high into fire. I'm highly competitive. I want to win, so I will keep going. I will keep going. But some people may have heard the story here is to develop the actual methodology for behavioral elements. It was more than a 2 year process. And I will be honest with you, at one point in time during that process, I was like, forget it. I can't win this fight. I'm not going to win this. I think that I'm just going to put my energy and attention into something else. So in that space, despite the fact that I had banged my head against the wall for a year and a half, I was on the verge of just saying, letting it go. And it was somebody else on my team that really kind of helped me sort of like, hey, put this methodical, do this, solve this small problem first, then this problem, then this problem, then this problem. And that was actually what got us over the finish line. So just because we have a lot of fire doesn't mean that we're going to be more resilient. Just because our fire is low doesn't mean we're going to be less resilient. When you look at water, like I said, water has a lot of resilience when it comes to other people. And in some cases, that can also be the counterweight. This is really why we talk about things like balance. Earth from a resistance or a resilience standpoint, usually when it's something right or something within its like sort of this is right, this is wrong, there is a lot of resilience in moving forward. When things are constantly shifting or changing, resilience significantly drops for somebody that's very high in earth. Air is kind of the opposite of that. When there's new ideas, new innovations, new experiences, new opportunities, yeah, resilience is high. Let's keep trying, let's keep going, let's keep failing and learning and keeping going. But when it becomes something that's stagnant where I'm not learning from it, I'm not going to do that. That doesn't, I don't have the discipline to just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. So don't think about the elements as, oh, I'm high in fire. I'm going to be great at resilience because sometimes and sometimes not. Or I am a water element. So maybe I might not be great at resilience. What do you think about that, Terry?
I think it's interesting to me that you frame that by saying we all have the same level of resilience. It's just what we do and how we tap into making it feel that way, right? I in all sincerity, I feel like we use a lot of different combinations of excuses to not do the things we want to do or dive deeper into the things we love doing, right? It's my post about being on the news yesterday started with out of my comfort zone, right? It was out of the zone for me. And but was it really? I'm sitting and talking and having a conversation with a guy I've known for years. I mean, come on, dude. That's out of your comfort zone. Give me a break. That's like like this is out of my comfort zone. Oh no. Oh, there's a camera. Now it's really uncomfortable. Who
Right.
cares? So it's an interesting piece. Just how we meant the mental gymnastics we go through to frame things up, good, bad, or otherwise, is fascinating to me in and of itself. Um, I do like the idea, though, especially the piece about the air side that you were talking about, in terms of once it gets to a point where I'm not learning or growing or being challenged through this, all of a sudden, it's not interesting to me, right? And I would assume the same is true as a fire for you. Once it doesn't feel like the competition is there, that you have a chance to win or that you are going to be better for the next match, right? And all of a sudden it's like, yeah, this is rote now. I'm not as interested in this. There's no prize at the end, right? There's nothing that I'm gonna do to be better the next time. Why keep smashing my face into this?
And
No.
that's why, and that's really why I say we got to make sure that we're balancing, right? We got to be able to lean into all of the elements. We have to fulfill all of those drives. Even if one of them calls at us at a higher level, being able to step into some of those other drives can really help us navigate feeling fulfilled and feeling like we're not overly digging into something. Now, we got about 4 or 5 minutes here. A couple of questions that are coming through in the Q&A. Love this. Thank you so much, team, for putting these questions in there. I'm going to take that first one and give a crack at it. And I'm going to do this kind of quick, but how do you build and maintain resilience while supporting others through a hard season? How do you not take on their stress and emotions as your own? I'm going to give you two quick tactics that I would suggest here. Is one, write yourself a boundary statement. Okay. I am going to listen and I'm going to hear, but here is where that's going to stop. I'm not going to accept other people's emotions as my own emotions. I am not going to act upon other people's emotions as my own emotions. I'm going to listen. I'm going to be a good listener and I'm going to engage. That boundary statement, when you write yourself that contract, will give you permission to sort of detach just a little bit. This is one of the things that Jocko Willing talks about that makes him a great leader is his ability to detach and step back. That doesn't mean he doesn't care. It means that he's not going to allow that piece to really influence his internal while still being able to show support, empathy, and connection at that external side. The second piece is really practice and get the whole culture doing this, practicing gratitude, identifying different things that you are thankful for and that the team is thankful for. Our brain naturally looks for the negative in so many cases that when we make a practice of thinking about the positive things, the things that we're grateful for, the things that are impactful in a positive way in our life, that we're actually rewriting circuitry in our brain. So something like writing down or saying the three things that you're grateful for from today, writing them down in a gratitude journal. Very, very powerful exercises. I do this every single meeting with my team. I always do some kind of gratitude practice at the very beginning of what was your win, what are you thankful for, something of that nature, and then making sure that at the end of the week we do the same thing. So hopefully that'll help you there. Terry Stewart's question is resilience more based off your experience in overcoming adversity, i.e., the past? The more you've overcome, the more likely you're able to maintain resilience in bigger and more difficult challenges. What are your thoughts?
I like that, right? We talked about that earlier in the episode about it's almost like you're building a muscle and you know that you've gotten through 100% of the challenges that have been thrown your way thus far. So I think that yeah, you steadily, it's a very rare person. I know a guy that did this, but it's a very rare person who doesn't run and says, I'm going to go run a marathon, right? I'm going to go run a 5K, then I'm going to run a half, then I'm going to run a marathon, right? I'm not going to go bench 350. I'm going to bench 180, then two and a quarter, then 300. And so most of the things that we do in life, we get better at by stepping up as we continue to grow.
I 100% agree with that because I do think that we can actually train in resilience. And this is something that, through ownership, through acknowledging, hey, this is here to help me learn something, to kind of shifting our mindset of why is this happening to what am I learning from it? All of those things I think are preparing you for that next challenge, that next adversity, that bigger adversity that's going to be coming because it's coming. We're all going to face adversity from the very beginning of our lives to the very end of our lives. And I think that through that experience is the people that are able to really build resilience at a functional level are the people that are comfortable with sometimes being uncomfortable with people who are capable of saying, yep, this sucks, because sometimes things suck. But what am I learning from it? And how am I going to overcome this? And oh, yeah, I do have the tools to be able to survive and thrive in this environment. So, any last words before we end our conversation on resilience here today, Terry?
Good show, dude. Really good show. I hope those listening had the same experience I did, but I enjoyed the insights, I enjoyed the conversation. And guys, you're gonna make it. You just have to know that you're gonna make it and just keep going.
And that's right. So, thank you for joining us for this month's Lunch and Learn on resilience and the elements. Hopefully, you're able to walk away with a couple of tactics and strategies that'll help you. But here's the thing that I want to ask you as the audience: challenge yourself. What is a micro resilience that you could practice this week? Maybe it's putting an extra little, 4 pound weight into your bag or your purse and carrying that. Why? Because it's uncomfortable. It doesn't make sense. Maybe it is taking that parking spot that is super far in the back of the lot. Maybe it is taking that blast of 10 seconds of ice cold water and really living through it and being present for that moment. That's going to help you build some resilience, and hopefully that's going to prepare you for the next. So, thank you again for joining us, and always good to have the conversations with you, my friend.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.